Finally, the manuscript, unglued. Not ready for the bookstores yet, but about 30 days. It'll be in a book form, paperback, and also Audible and ebook. So, long journey, lots of books read, lots of lectures given, and I want to talk to you about how I got to unglued. Unglued is the concept of how you can get well from the effects of sugar. And I came up with the word unglued because glucose is a Greek word, means to adhere, to stick to. It's glue. So one of the producers said, then we need to call the book Unglued. How to Get Unglued, the Secret Science of Stem Cells that Dissolve the Effects of Sugar. And this is exactly what this book is all about. It gets a little technical. I pick up from where Sugar Crush, my first book, was written and came out in 2015, but the research goes back to 2000. When I studied with Dr. Lee Dellon at Johns Hopkins, who taught me the concept of nerve decompression. And why is that important? Because nerves are the conduits from which we get all our information back to the brain to process the stimuli that we are taking in from our environment. And sugar, which is a glue, causes chemically to adhere and stop that flow and impedes the blood supply. Now, there's a lot of biochemistry behind this concept, one of which is the Maillard reaction. And that's a cooking term. Maillard means a glycation between a sugar or a protein, and it combines into a sticky substance that we're going to show you later on our video here, that when you add these substances together, it does make them more flavorful. But it really is a cooking process, and that's how when we're first born, when we get that first taste of sugar, we start the cooking process of our own bodies, and we're slowly, like a chicken on a rotisserie, cooking ourselves to death. Some people do it quickly. Some people, it takes 80 years. But on average, the Maillard reaction, sugar plus a protein, takes about 40 years. So wrinkles, cataracts, neuropathy, MS, autism, these are all manifestations of that process. And I'll get into it in detail in the book. But for our purposes for our videos, I'm going to give you pieces of the puzzle as I discovered it. Now, going back to Dr. Dellon at Johns Hopkins and his instruction and his ideas on nerve compression, he was introduced to this concept through two fellows from Harvard, Upton and McComas. And they had theorized in 1973 that carpal tunnel, which was a very rare disease back in the 60s, very few people had carpal tunnel. But they wrote a paper in 1973 that said compression of the carpal tunnel at the wrist and along that nerve. They also recognized that the brachial plexus, which are the nerves of the shoulder and neck, when you released one area of compression, now this is a physical compression where the sugar causes it to bind down. And they did a carpal tunnel release and neck pain went away, or vice versa. When they decompressed the nerve at the neck, then the wrist got better. They noticed 16% of their patients in that 1973 paper had diabetes. And that's where the term from my first book came from, sugar crush, because sugar is a crush causing this to happen. Sugar plus trauma equals nerve dysfunction. And that's why we call this process the double crush syndrome. So there's more biochemistry to this. Where does this biochemistry happen? Why does it happen? And where is it coming from? It's coming from our food. Lucy, our first primate, did not eat sugar. Originally, she did when she was an arboreal being 3.2 million years ago. She got out of the trees. She got walking across the savannah, and she was eating bugs and then tasted meat, then the invention of fire. She changed her morphology from a 3.3.5 foot tree dweller to an arboreal dweller into a bipedal walking being. And theoretically, we are her descendants. 3.2 million years ago, Don Johanson, the famous anthropologist who discovered her in 1974 in Ethiopia, exactly 50 years ago. So this is a very important part of my concept because we all ask the question, what should we eat? And what did we eat? We are carnivores. Now, do we eat other things? Yes, we can eat fermented vegetables and we can assimilate just about anything. But if you want to be healthy, you really need to just eat meat.